So much talk, the head came off my head. Hi, I'm Michael Wallhead and this is my latest project, what we call the Raleigh Sh-leeper. Started out life as a shopping bike that I found in my great auntie's coal shed when we were clearing out the house. I walked into the coal shed and knew straight away what I wanted to do with it. It had been sat there on the old tyres at least 30 years. My auntie actually remembers riding it for a bit. I think she called it her bike for a little bit as well. It looks like it's had a few different coats of paint over the years. As soon as I got hold of the bike, I decided that I wanted to put an engine in the back. We call it the Sh-leeper because it's got the Wicker Basket on there to try and disguise the fact that it's actually got an engine. It's 80cc, 2-stroke, got a small expansion pipe on that not quite working how we expected today due to somebody forgetting to put a bolt on there. Yeah, we've had a few issues with the fueling system as well, and I didn't have the kill switch connected up. So we couldn't cut the engine off, which resulted in it running away. I didn't even know that diesels could 2-stroke. I don't know, I'm assuming that it was dieseling. Diesel, 2-strokes could diesel. I'm assuming that it was dieseling and that's how it kept running. As for power wise, I'm not really sure what it puts out. We're assuming somewhere around the 7 horsepower mark. Maybe that's a little bit ambitious. When we were out running it, it wasn't getting onto the expansion pipe and it still felt like it was doing maybe 15 mile an hour. With the brakes, we had to remove the left brake, the rear brake for a clutch obviously. And then with the way that the cables were mounted, and originally I was trying to keep all this inside the frame, so I only retained the front brake, which is not a disc brake, that's all I can tell you. And child's rubber block brakes. Rubber block brakes.
Rubber baby buggy bumpers.
I think that's what we'll refer to them as. And then of course the brake lever bottoms out on the throttle assembly there, so you don't actually get full maximum braking either. The gearing on the bike, it's just a single, it's like a pedal and pop, so you have to pedal the bike to get it going and then you basically pump start it. So it's only got a single gear, there's no gear shift, but you just hold the clutch in whilst you're pedaling, so you're not pushing against the engine. The original gear setup on these early bikes, they call it a Sturmey Archer, where it runs inside and there's a planetary gear inside the hub, and you've got control of that up on the handle at the top here. So it's effectively 3-speed on the pedals, only 2 of them work. I've not looked into why. The seating position is kind of governed by the Wicker Basket, so you have to sit really high up, and of course you sit high up, you put the steering high up, so you're kind of sat quite high, and the steering is very sensitive on this with the small front wheel, so it's a little bit dicey at speed. The fuel tank currently, it's just a piece of stainless pipe that I had kicking around that I welded an MGB filler neck onto there, and then a little takeoff obviously on the bottom. But eventually I want this to be a thermos flask. The total cost of this project, I think, is probably around £30. We paid £15 for the basket off Amazon. The bell was already on there, although I'm not sure it's original. And then the rear Wicker Basket, I just cut one out of the bottom that I found on Marketplace. I think that was a £5, and then I only paid £15 for the engine, which was on another bike. So I've modified that to fit this, built my own framework from scrap. One point of concern is obviously wicker. Well, we're not 100% sure, but we're assuming that it might actually be flammable. Currently the exhaust sits on the front of the Wicker Basket there, so I think one of the future mods that we're going to have to do is maybe tidy a bit of wiring up, get rid of some potential fires there, and then maybe heat wrap the exhaust as well, just to give us a little bit of protection. so for some reason it's not firing into life. That one ran a little bit lean, didn't it? Because obviously someone starved it of fuel, so I don't know, maybe it's enough to stop it bumping into life, but yeah, if it sounds like I'm knackered, I'm not used to riding this many miles, kilometres, yards on a push bike. Here we go, pop the little doohickey over onto there, and then we'll, I mean, there's a few things that we could iron out, like the wiring better, but hopefully that's it now. Hopefully it fires up and I can enjoy some fresh air. Yeah, obviously two-strokes don't like running lean. They have oil in the fuel to lubricate them, so I think what's happened with how that plug looked, it's got really lean, just got hot and it's pinched the piston up, so it might get better with heat. If it cools down a bit, it might just sort of shrink back, but for now it's like fully, I mean, we've tried pushing the piston down as well and it's stuck. Oh well. I took the head off, put the space on there just to hold the barrel down whilst I tried to move the piston around. And you can see it looks like something's got wedged in the exhaust part passageway and then just sort of dragged up the cylinder wall. So I'm assuming what's happened is the rings got really hot and sort of expanded into that gap. That would be my theory anyway, but the rest of the wall looks good. Normally I'd be worried about this, but the fact that the engine's scrap anyway now, may as well try for nothing, haven't you? So much talk! The head came off my head! Oh my word. I was flying that time. Speed bubble and everything. We got to 25 mile an hour at the bottom of the stretch, and just before it came onto the two-stroke power band, as it were, it just started with a little bit of knocking. Pretty sure that's the bottom end bearing that's gone. It just locked up the rear wheel, wouldn't turn at all. It rocked it forward and backwards a little bit and it started moving around, but it's not making clever noises. So, did try bump it back into life again, but yeah, unfortunately I think that's the end of this engine. So, yeah. Just to give you a bit of an overview of what's happened. So this is the piston cylinder, which you can see it's got a crack just below the exhaust port. It's cracked at the cast there. You can see there's some pretty deep scouring marks in there as well. Should all be silky smooth like the rest of it. And then when you actually look onto the piston itself, quite interestingly, if you look, this is a characteristic that's unique to two-strokes. If you look right there, there's a little pin, and that pin's there, it sits with the brake on the piston ring, and what that does is stop the piston ring from rotating. The idea of stopping the piston ring rotating on a two-stroke is you don't want the ring to land on the exhaust port. So what they do is they put the pins in the top, but they also mark the piston on the top there. Now typically the arrow points to the exhaust side, so with the inlet being on this side you'd expect the arrow to be facing that way, which would then leave this piston ring gap on the other side, not the exhaust side which it's been on. So yeah, it does look like somebody has attached this piston incorrectly.